All right, wow, this looks good. All right, I'm John Maffei. I work for a company called Matcherino. I'm the CEO of Matcherino. We are an esports platform. I'm here to talk about how to monetize your esport events. Company's been around for about 4 years. We've had 5,000 different tournaments take place on our platform, so we've had a lot of experience on esports and how to monetize it. So I think everyone who follows esports at all knows that there is massive growth. Quick anecdote, I was listening to a talk from the CEO of Super Evil Megacorp. That's an awesome name, by the way. He comes out and he showed Netflix 10K. Netflix is putting on competitors. They weren't listing HBO. They weren't listing Showtime. They were listing Fortnite. There's a competitive threat around people playing games and moving away from watching videos. So clearly extremely popular. We see this massive growth. The size of the esports fans are now bigger than Major League Baseball, bigger than hockey, soon to be taking on that of NBA and NFL. Monetization, think of traditional sports out there today. 75% of the $15 billion that comes in from the NFL is from advertising. So it makes sense that advertising will play a big part of esports. There's another challenge with esports that isn't had in traditional sports. You think about, you go to an event, you go to a football game, you go to Wimbledon, you go to any event, you buy a $300 ticket, you buy a $250 ticket. 99% of all activity around fans is online today. That may change. There's certainly some small venues that are out there, and the Barclays Centers, for example, is doing the Overwatch League. Valve's International was at Key Center. It was in Vancouver last year. But most of the events are not in physical locations. They're viewed online. So advertising is even more important. So when you think about esports monetization, for everyone but the publisher, advertising is probably the key driver. Just a little bit more to that. So we have up to 500 million esports fans by 2022, according to that last graphic by Goldman Sachs. But really, really low monetization. So we're monetizing about $4 a user now. Esports relatively new, 5 years old, maybe older if you go, but kind of people use that. $4, lots of room for growth. The NFL's been around for 100 years. They monetize at $55 a fan. The NBA's been around for 71 years. They monetize at $35 a fan. So how is it that we can bridge that gap? How can you make more money in esports? E-commerce is a big part. We'll talk about DLC sales, and specifically those people who have been successful on it. We've talked about advertising, but merchandising and ticketing will be another part as well too. And then just it should make sense to everyone. The bigger the prize pool, the better that people who want to actually win that prize. So think about like a tennis tournament. Do you want to go watch Roger Federer, or do you want to watch a college player? You know, for esports, the bigger the prize pool, the better the players. These players have big followings. People want to go follow them. So in general, what we've seen is that if you can raise a prize pool, you know, just to a slightly moderate level, to $10,000, doesn't seem like a very big prize pool. We've seen an event without kind of monetization has, you know, 25,000 viewers, but when they go and they make that prize pool significantly bigger by monetizing it and giving part of the proceeds to it, it jumps to 200,000. So here's the model for the international. So Valve, Dota 2 event, puts on the international. This is probably seen as the most popular or best esports example for North America. 10 teams go and participate for a, it's up to now a $30, $40 million prize pool. But what Valve does is they sell $130, $140 million of virtual items, and they give 20% of those proceeds to the prize pool. They also do some advertising. There's fan donations. There's sponsorships. They sell some tickets. This does take place in the physical arena. But if you think about that, the one thing is, think about getting prize pools bigger and monetizing as being driven by community. So how do you get your users to go and contribute? One very big way is to get them to participate in e-commerce. That's a model that definitely will need to move forward to drive that up from $4. So I'll quickly go through, everybody in the ecosystem has different needs. If you're a fan, what do you want to do? You really want to make sure there's more content coming up. And that's kind of the biggest thing, which is how do you make sure there's more content? Well, make sure that event is successful. Think of if you couldn't watch your next favorite Netflix show, if a lot of people didn't watch it and upvote it. Same kind of idea there, but fans vote with their pocketbooks. They actually contribute money, they make donations, they buy items, so it's successful. Gamers, they want to make more money. Everyone wants to be a professional gamer. They want to get paid quickly. If you're an organizer, you've got two tasks. How do you actually make the event occur? So can I run an event? There's a lot of actual things you have to do to make a event happen. You have to have bracketing. You have to have leaderboards. You have to have social media. The other way, you have to drive the financial part of this, which is how do you get advertisers to go fund your event? How do you work with publishers? So lots of tools needed for managing your financials, managing the back end, but how do you go and actually get a revenue stream to make the prize pool bigger? Publishers, it's really simple. If a fan participates in esports, they're 3 times as likely to make a commerce transaction. They're 2.5 times more likely to retain on your game. If you can get a big audience of people playing esports, you're going to be more successful. And finally, sponsors. Everybody wants to be involved with this audience. The biggest challenge that people run into is, okay, I want this audience. I think the esports audience is important. It's a 13 to 35-year-old demo. They're seen as the influencer demo. Everyone wants to know, what's my return on investment for my esports spend? So if I'm going to go and sponsor a tournament for $50,000, how much money do I make at the end of the day? So kind of just going through a little of these. So if you are putting on an esport event, one of the most important things is letting your fans be actually to donate. So taking fan donations and making that as easy as possible. The second thing you have to think about is, how do we pay out people? If you have lots of winners, you're an Epic, and you have to pay out tens of thousands of users, that's a fairly complex thing. But pay your winners quickly. They'll be much more happy. They'll come back to your events. And then you actually have to do tax compliance. So you can't ignore the fact that if you pay someone over $600, you have to actually go generate tax forms for them. And if they're international, you have to remit their taxes to the foreign government, hold back part of their winnings and remit those. So e-commerce is a very big way to drive esports monetization. So selling of DLC is the simplest thing. Two kind of ways to think about this. Most often publishers put on their own tournaments. That's the easiest. They own their own in-game items. They can sell in-game items. Fans love in-game items. They can give a portion of that to the prize pool. They can take the lion's shares from themselves. That's the model that Valve has proven out. You see that all across Asia, clearly a good model. The second one is, think about what I talked about, that esports fans monetize 3 times as much, they retain 2.5 times. If you're a publisher, you want as many third parties as possible throwing tournaments around your event. So Blizzard is a great example on this. They will take StarCraft and they will say, we want as many third-party organizers doing this, and they'll actually give virtual currency or downloadable items for those tournaments to sell so they can make more money and they can create a bigger event and have bigger prize pools. Advertising remains one of the biggest and hardest things about this industry. So look at all the brands that are investing. Mercedes is supporting League of Legends. You'll have T-Mobile supporting the Overwatch League. You have Comcast supporting the Overwatch League. You have people putting, basically now going and backing teams. So you see lots of NFL, Jerry Jones has a team. Lots of people who own different professional franchises are getting involved in this. Today, esports advertising is a lot about getting your brand out there, and that is a great thing, and everyone wants to get their brand out there. But it comes back to, what are the complaints that people have, or what are they going to write the next check, which is, how did I drive the KPIs that matter the most to our business? So what does every CMO want to know? How did the dollar I just invest drive extra revenue? There needs to be some sort of ROI tracking for it to go to the next level. Ideally, someone wants to go and drive their KPIs. We work with 24-Hour Fitness, for example, at Matcherino. They're an advertiser. 24-Hour Fitness knows their business perfectly. If they can get someone to buy a gym membership, that means that someone's going to be basically worth $500 for them over the course of the next few years. People stay on for 2 years. They know very clearly that if they get someone to download a free pass, they have a very high conversion rate from that person to a trial member into a paying member full-time. So having an ability to understand, so for 24-hour fitness, it's pretty simple. The KPI they want to drive is download free passes. Subway wants to drive people into their restaurants. What's the most important thing? They want you to join their affinity program. When you join their affinity program, every day they send you a coupon to your phone saying half off a 12-inch sub or buy one, get one free. That's their metric. Every business has their own metrics they want to drive. How do you, if you're involved in esports, help drive those? The other issue have happened is that gamers really don't like advertising and traditionally have been very not a fan of actually, they think that people who are, bringing in brand sponsors are sellouts. Well, they also love their communities. They want their events to be bigger and successful. So how do you create a positive feedback loop where fans actually do want to engage with a brand? Are they getting some benefit out of their engagement? They do get one benefit and they say, hey, the tournament's going to be more successful, but can they get offered some sort of value, a discount, some sort of thing that they can use? Finally, sponsors have to weigh to, today sponsors have very Cadillac-oriented solutions to go and get into esports. So for example, they can go back the Overwatch League, but to get a team into the Overwatch League, it's expensive. It costs $20 million to get a team in. Is there a way for them to go and get exposure to esports fans across multiple tournaments is an ask that they ask for. And is there a way where they can do it on a cost performance level? So one of the things to think about is take a brand like 24-Hour Fitness. What do they want to drive? They want to get people to join their social media. They want to get people to join their, visit their website, but they really want people to go and download passes. You can take any brand, you can figure out what are the key things that are driving them. And then if you're running an esports tournament, how do you help them establish these KPIs? So here's a quick example. This is just two people are playing Dragon Ball Z. A caster might say, hey, please go visit our sponsors, make the prize pool bigger, you'll get some sort of benefit. So in this case, they go and they pick an action. In this case, they visit the 24-hour special offers page. A donation would be made to the prize pool. And there's a feedback loop mechanism where the fan gets credit. They also might get a free 7-day pass. So when we think about how do we get more fans to actually want to go engage, part of it is exposure. Does the fan actually know that, hey, the opportunity to go and exist? But another one is consumer motivation. So why would that fan go and do that? Are they helping the prize pool get bigger? Are they helping make the tournament more successful? Are they getting some sort of consumer benefit? So that's it. If anyone has any questions, I think I've got a few minutes left.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay, thank you. So yes, any questions, folks? Got questions straight away?
Hi there, super insightful, thank you. Quick question about the form factor of mobile devices and sort of the growth of the audience base. Are there any limitations around consumption, all the opportunities that you stated around how players engage or how users interact and engage? I was just curious sort of how you view that growth and adoption relative to an audience on a mobile device.
So two different things we're talking about there. There's the game in specific. So if you look at this market, esports is only PC and console with the exception of Supercell, having a little traction with Clash Royale. It's just, but if you look at Asia, it's completely opposite. So mobile adoption as esports in terms of mobile games, we assume it's coming. We assume it's coming in a huge wave. If you think that the United States market or the Western market's 5 years behind Asia in terms of mobile adoption, that wave is coming. Consumption of streams and of viewing habits, if you go back to my first slide, we're talking how big the audience is, it's almost up to 2/3 now being involved on a mobile factor, including tablets. So As I look across the room, it looks like a younger demographic, but if anyone has a kid who's 10 or 11, they walk around the house all day long, staring at their screen, watching YouTube, watching Twitch. So clearly fan engagement and fan watching of esports is very mobile driven. We think that will only continue. Just a quick aside, there's more mobile content hours watched on YouTube and Twitch than all other professional sports combined.
Another question. Oh, the guy behind you, James, first, and I'll get to you.
Hi, quick question. I know you recently touched on the Overwatch League and traditional sports actually investing into Overwatch League. Mm-hmm. I was wondering what your opinion is on, especially in the Overwatch League, a lot of people are actually building arenas for spectator viewing, and how do you think monetization within spectator will be for esports specifically?
Massive growth of LAN centers occurring, so one will open every other weekend. Depends where that LAN center is. So there's a big one in the Luxor, there's ones in Vegas. They're not going away, there will only be more of them. I think LAN centers are popping up. The challenge of running a LAN center is just an occupancy challenge. So how can you get as many throughput as possible 7 days a week? We did a Ninja Vegas event. It was in the Luxor. We sold out 500 tickets in 18 minutes. We could have sold 25,000 tickets to that. There's an example of a highly popular event. How do you keep it busy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday?
James.
Hi, I'm James. I run a games media business. Okay. I've got two questions. First of all, I didn't understand technically how the Matcherino app is distributed. Is it like an overlay? Secondly, I don't recognize the 90% ad block stat. Where did you get that?
So, I will, if I get your address, I will get you that, but we've gotten research reports saying that 90% of gamers actively use ad block. So that it would be just straight from, everyone has them in their browser. I'm sure that if you looked across the room, 90% of people here probably are using an ad blocker. So overlays, we have different things depending on what medium you do. We have overlays that work on different ones, and certainly not exclusive to us. Everyone should be using overlays to engage fans and show activities it can take. One popular overlay is how engaged are fans, who's making donations, how big is the prize pool. And we see that constantly as a positive feedback loop, which is used not just for esports, but used across all streaming services.
So web overlay, no download?
No download, web overlay. But not exclusive to us, millions of them have them.
Yeah. And there are also a few services that do in-game world ads for the developers. I happen to help one of them out. You had a question, this will be the last one, and we'll move on. Okay.
What do you think are some of the largest hurdles keeping local areas that are lacking in esports scene that seem way overdue for one from being monetized? I think specifically Seattle seems extremely behind in terms of what it ought to be for a local esports scene. What do you think is keeping the growth from happening?
Well, I would argue that the growth is going to come quickly because Walmart is opening up gaming centers in a bunch of their stores. GameStop has 4,000 retail locations which are begging for esports tournaments locally. Magic the Gathering, I heard a stat that there's 1 million Magic the Gathering tournaments annually. That number is wild, and that's from them that they say that just in local card shops occurring. There will be a local esports scene, it just hasn't developed yet at a big level, but if you think Magic is the shining example, then it's coming.